I would like to introduce our other two panelists, and I am hoping that Irina Bokova will be on screen with us in just a few seconds. If that is not yet the case, I will start with Lazaris, Ambassador Lazaris. You represent the Greek IRA presidency. You are also a decorated diplomat. I have noticed you have served in Syria. You have served as the ambassador to the Holy See. And most importantly, I think, for our discussion today, you were also director for interfaith relations. And you have put a lot of emphasis on education during the IRA presidency. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
And let me just see if Irina is with us already, or should we start the... Hello, Irina Bokova. I can see you on one screen. We can see you all here. Welcome to the panel.
Hello, thank you.
Good, and we can hear you too now. Let me just introduce you to the audience. You are chair of the Board of Governors here of the Democracy and Culture Foundation. That is your position. But we all know you, of course, as UNESCO Director General, where you have progressed, I think, the agenda in three very important areas: gender equality, sustainable development, and, of course, all your work for education, quality education, which is the theme that we will be looking at first. Thank you very much for being with us. And if I may put the first question to all of you, perhaps starting with Irina. We all agree that Holocaust education about what happened, is important all over the world, and our initiatives here are all about that. But can that be tailor-made? Must it be tailor-made to different audiences? Is the work that UNESCO, the Council of Europe, and others doing too general? Can it be accepted by the whole population of Europe and beyond? What specificities do we need? What specific details do we need to take into account when we're teaching the history of the Holocaust in Germany or Ukraine or in Bulgaria? So my first question is, perhaps to you, Irina, what more needs to be done? What is the nature of education that we need to put forward to, in particular, young people today who have no recollection or remembrance of what happened?
Very much for this opportunity, and let me just add that I'm also a member of the board of the Babyn Memorial Center, and I'm to meet once again here Per Desbois, with whom we have worked very well at UNESCO during my time, and I'm sure that we continue. And also to say how important the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance is in all this. And what Per Desbois just mentioned resonates very deeply with my experience at UNESCO. These were the years where we developed a strong Holocaust remembrance program for education. And let me just say that it continues until today. It's just a coincidence that today and tomorrow UNESCO is organizing a big conference on the teaching of Holocaust through education. From that point, I think what is very important, of course, is to have credible voices. So it's a commitment in this particular case to the United Nations. I remember when I appointed, and I'm very proud of it, for the first time in the United Nations system, a special for Holocaust education and prevention of genocides. I think this is the key also to link the two, to speak about the Holocaust, about what happens, the remembrance, but also link it to mass atrocities and to the prevention of future such mass. This special envoy was Samuel Pizarro, an extraordinary personality, a Holocaust survivor, and I would say another defender of human rights. And I still remember, because he was indeed very much speaking about prevention of racial discrimination, about denigration of human rights, of human dignity based on religion, faith, religion, race, and he was always saying that I speak not only to mourn the dead, but to mourn the living. On the basis of this kind of thinking, we developed the Holocaust education program with a number of very important publications, you said very targeted. I just would like to mention a few of them. It is about why teach about the Holocaust. We did publish this in 2014. Before that, we were looking at teaching a Holocaust in an early age and what are the difficulties from the view. We were linking it with the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, of the global citizenship education, which is one of the targets of the goal on quality education. How does education about Holocaust advance global citizenship education? And I would say one of the very important works that was developed by UNESCO, they started in 2016 and then was published as an important publication with the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights in the OECD, addressing anti-Semitism through education, guidelines for policymakers. And here, the link, a specific link was done with the anti-Semitism that unfortunately is on the rise, and Père Desbois just mentioned it, saying that, of course, there is a need for policies in education, and of course, it is there, but it is not enough. It has to be with the such phenomenon as we see today, like the hate speech, as Patrick Dubois mentioned, the criminal anti-Semitism. It is not just words. We know that words can kill, that violence can emerge out of this hate speech. And we looked at that, and I think it's the right angle to look at the Holocaust education past, but also to teach the mechanisms of escalating violence, the mechanisms of how prejudice can lead to insults, insultation, and discrimination to murder. I think this is very important. And a last word, because I think I want to pick up from what Dubois just said also. The uniqueness of the Babyn Memorial is exactly there. That it, of course, look at the criminal murders, at the I would say, the unknown or the hidden crimes, Holocaust, but also a place where people could take up and learn of the future. And just last word is important, because anti-Semitism today is very much linked with the hate speech. And we have seen that the pandemic now has unleashed, I would say, a tsunami of hate. And this is where the role of the United Nations, for that matter, is critical, mobilizing all different stakeholders and partners. But the initiative of the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, launched in 2019, should not be overestimated. It's a special, I would say, strategy and plan of action to counter hate speech. And within this context, I think linking it with the respect for human rights, with the elimination of all forms of discrimination, is quite critical today. So these are a few reflections that I would like to share responding.
Thank you very much for your valuable reflections, Ambassador Lazaris. I would like to ask you about education in the context of the IRA definition on Holocaust. How is that progressing?
Well, the IRA definition of the Holocaust, of anti-Semitism in the Holocaust, is perhaps the most valuable tool that IRA has developed over the years. It forms the basis of the legislation of many countries. For some years already, it's the basis of Greek legislation, for example. Of course, it also provides the main guideline as to what consider as anti-Semitic and denialist speech when we're confronting this phenomenon in social life. And therefore, this is also our guideline on how to build our education programs to fight precisely this phenomenon. So it's an all-important tool. I know that there are various other ideas about how to make another definition. For me, this is a mistake. As I say, there will always be a better mousetrap, but this is not the point. The point is that we have a very valid tool. It has taken us years to come to it. It has been accepted by democratic dialogue and consensus. So if you have something that works that well, and also it has been acquired with such effort, we are not restarting the whole process from scratch, because you'll never do the job you're supposed to do. So,
what are you doing with the countries which haven't adopted it yet? Is there sort of a strategy to convince them?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, this is mostly done by the permanent officers. The presidencies, third presidencies of each year are helping also on that score. But as I said, this is such a flexible tool that it is being accepted without much trouble by most states that promulgate legislation against anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial and distortion.
Thank you. Thank you. Patrick, can I ask you about education? You mentioned the rise of anti-Semitism. What are we doing wrong in education? I mean, in Germany, Holocaust education is taught from a very early age on, and I suppose the same in France. What are we doing wrong?
For me, there are two problems. I'm also professor in Georgetown since 7 years, so I see the students year after year. They are like 19 years old, 20, and they are in foreign affairs. Two things. Year after year, I see that for a young generation, it's far away. My students are 18, so 19, so it's not the story of grandpa, but grand-grandpa. So when you arrive at grand-grandpa, you don't know what you know about your grand-grandpa, but me, I don't know anything. I stopped at grandpa. My grandpa is already deported, and now I work for the Jews in 18 years, it's enough. So it's the first thing, it's far away, very far away. They know two names, Hitler and Auschwitz, and after you begin from scratch. Secondly, I think for a young generation, it's complicated to swallow the big history of Holocaust. The growth of anti-Semitism in Germany, and Hitler, and Himmler, and Heydrich, and Goebbels, and the camps, it's too much. So the choice, what I did, is to make them study a crime in a village or a crime in Auschwitz. Who killed who? Because the students are very attracted to that. Don't forget that they don't learn only from the school now. They learn from internet themselves. They are connected much more out of the school than in the school. And they have many series, very fiction, like Cold Case, like X-File, like all these series that they know to investigate. So I think it's better to show them, okay, by example, in Babyn, where are the belongings of the Jews? We don't know. So here is an investigation you can work on. But to repeat endlessly that the Jews have been killed and killed, okay, we say we are not Jews and it's far away. And even the Jews say, it's story of grandpa. Me, I'm young, I make business. So I think we are confronting to two challenges. Time is running, and it's far away. And secondly, people have the temptation to join these groups of killers. I will hate groups is tempting. I will finish by something. You know, now the new James Bond is appearing in the news. It was advertised in Paris yesterday. The hero was... Everybody wants to be James Bond. But I can tell you, I don't know nothing about the movie, but I'm sure James Bond will kill the bad people. I'm sure. Everybody wants to be James Bond and to clean the bad people. So sometimes you are attracted if the bad people are the Jews, it's me, I'm James Bond. If they are the gypsy, they are the black, it's me.
Well, they're looking for a successor, so I have a suggestion to make, a good James Bond. No Time to Kill, perhaps. To both of you, Irina, and to you, the question about Babyn Yar. Now, this is a mega project. It's having a very big impact, but it has also resistance within the country. Is this something that we can overcome? Resistance from different groups? Is it something that happens to all major projects? How can we, in Ukraine and beyond, gather acceptance for such a major project? Irina, perhaps.
If you allow me just to add something to the previous question, and I think it was a very interesting question about the difficulties in educating Holocaust. To all of us, it seems quite obvious that it has to be taught, and why be a resistance, or why just people shy away, don't understand it. And definitely, from my experience at UNESCO, such obstacles, such hindrances. What I have noticed from working with different universities, creating UNESCO chairs, because we create a UNESCO chair in Jagiellon University, in University of Southern California, in Camp-de-Mille in France, in the southern France, where there was one of the biggest deputation center of children. I think what is very important is not just to show big figures, we know the figures, terrifying, but also to show the people behind, the humans, the families, the faces, that it is not just some numbers there, but they had their lives, their families, everything. From that point of view, supporting this type of approach, like we do now in Babyn Yar, by the way, because you did mention the Babyn Yar project, I was extremely impressed by the collection of such kind of a data when I visited the University of Southern California, supported by the Spielger Foundation. And there you can see really stories. You just hear speaking the last survivors, or you just hear about stories. And having this type of approach now in Babyn Yar, I think will immensely raise the awareness and pass a different message about to the Ukrainian society or outside to look at these anonymous kind of numbers and figures and show that they were just human beings like you and me. This was indeed a terrible crime. So from that point of view, just to jump a little bit into your other question about that, I did mention that it is important to open the lid of something that has been silent for a time, and to show what happened. And then, of course, comes the incredibly important work of Père Patrick Desbois, who is doing, I would say, the unimaginable of looking at these forgotten and unknown until this day Jews and people that terminated.
Thank you very much. I will be attending the ceremony next week as well, and I think the support that we're showing here today to Ukraine and to Babyn Yar is very important internationally, and it will be underlined by many keynote speakers. And I think it is really, really important for a country to come to terms with its past, to be open, and to invite the international community to such an event. I was recently invited to an event in Romania, which was the anniversary of the Iași pogrom, in which 13,000 Jews were killed in a matter of 2 days. It's similar, not in dimension, but in the kind of Holocaust by bullets that you're a specialist in and have written about. We're coming to the end. Perhaps one priority from each of you in the fight against anti-Semitism, in the fight of rising anti-Semitism?
Well, I think that one thing that we should be careful about is to make the Holocaust narrative accessible to the younger generation. We still tend to rely too much on formal teaching in the classroom. This is fine, but the place where our youngsters get their ideas now is the internet. So I think,
For example, the Holocaust survivor speaking on TikTok, for example.
yes, and don't forget, Holocaust survivors are getting thinner on the ground. We lost one of our last 2 months ago, and that created a shock because we realized there were very few left after.
Thank you very much. That was. I've got to stick in the time frame. Patrick.
So for me, the importance is we come back to teach the crime, to teach who killed who and where, because that interests young people. You spoke about Babyn Yar. Why people criticize Babyn Yar? Because they are doing something. They will speak one day about oligarch, about money, about Putin, but they don't speak about who killed who. Nobody's interested to know that. And I think we have to come back to the center of what was in the Holocaust, and the mass crime today is it was a crime story. And if we go out of that, it's a way to escape it. So, I can tell you, the young students today, they look at movies, at fiction, and they love James Bond.
Very good. Education, the perpetrators and the criminals behind the Holocaust. Irina, you have the last word. Priority in fighting anti-Semitism in this day and age.
I would be linked definitely with what is emerging now in the world. It's the hate speech, it's the extreme, I would say, ideologies, if I may call them this way, the stigmatization of minorities, of the other, and so we just do not realize that words can kill. We have seen that in Rwanda, in Bosnia, and recently. And we have always to be vigilant. I don't think that just saying nowadays we have the national approach towards human rights, democracy, and all this. We see that unfortunately there may be setbacks, and setbacks. Criminal, as Patrick Desbois also mentioned, criminal anti-Semitism. And what worries me a lot is that all the political discourse is moving to the far right. And as the French say, banalization of all this, that is an indifference. I think this is the worst that may happen to us.
Thank you very much to all of you. I think we've identified 3 very important priorities: reaching out to the young, identifying the perpetrators, the criminals, and fighting hate speech. And with that, I would like to thank our panelists with a round of applause. And I have the honor to announce a recorded message from Giannis Chryssoulakis, the General Secretary of Greeks Abroad and Public Diplomacy.
Father Patrick Desbois, Mrs. Irina Bokova, Your Excellency Ambassador Chris Lazaris, Mr. Daniel Höltgen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to conclude this symposium on combating racism and hate speech, lessons from the Holocaust within this year's edition of the Athens Democracy Forum and the Greek Presidency of the IRA. Let me congratulate the Athens Democracy Forum for hosting this symposium and to wish the forum the best of success for many years to come. The Athens Democracy Forum is indeed a great yearly event dealing in a focused and efficient manner with contemporary issues promoting the democratic ideals worldwide. Let me emphasize that the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs backs our presidency and defends the goals of the IRA. We do that with all our power and most importantly, from the fullness of our heart. The IRA has a unique mission, putting together the lessons of the Holocaust and contemporary challenges to our democracies. The IRA has elaborated with broad concessions the working definition of the Holocaust denial and distortion, an astounding tool for developing recommendations for actions by each member countries. We Greeks, being a people who suffered immensely during the Second World War, not least by losing our Jewish community up to 85%, and at the same time particularly attached to our democratic values. We have wholeheartedly endorsed the goals of the IRA, and we are all doing everything for their consolidation, both during our presidency and beyond. This symposium is particularly happening during the Greek presidency of the IRA and the 8th anniversary of Babyn provides an opportunity for showcasing to IRA a global audience. But this symposium, with the association with the New York Times, is not the only event during the Greek presidency hoping to reach a global audience for combating antisemitism, racism, and hate speech. From the outset, we were convinced that the digital battlefield is the most fertile ground for developing antisemitism, Holocaust denial and distortion, racism, and all other extremist ideas. Therefore, during the Greek presidency of the IRA, next to encouraging education and holistic processes, which is the main priority of our presidency among a number of events, we will organize a conference involving experts from Greece and abroad to deal with the problem of antisemitism and hate speech in the digital battlefield and suggest educational solutions for the society of Greece and beyond. We hope, as a matter of fact, to leave a lasting legacy for the IRA, a good example to follow by all our partners within the IRA and globally. So, for March 2022, an international conference will be held in Ioannina, a city in the northwest of Greece, on the topic combating antisemitism and Holocaust denial and distortion on the digital battlefield. The conference will update on how to support historical truth through innovative technologies on the internet and in the social media. Distinguished guests, concluding my short address, I'd like to be optimistic, hoping we will not only do our share, but also a significant advance for the IRA and the fight against antisemitism, Holocaust denial and distortion, and all forms of racism and discrimination. It is our human responsibility towards the millions of victims of the Holocaust. It is our duty to honor the righteous among the nations.
And thank you for bearing with us.